The vacuum of space trembled as the Zornak battle fleet materialized near Earth's orbit. Razor-sharp crystalline ships cut through the darkness like predatory shards of glass, their iridescent hulls pulsing with barely contained energy. Ambassador Krellix curled his tentacular appendages in anticipation, mandibles clicking with a rhythm of absolute certainty. Holographic displays flickered across the bridge of the flagship Void Piercer, displaying the culmination of decades of interstellar intelligence gathering. Earth appeared as a blue-green marble, utterly unremarkable in the grand tapestry of galactic civilizations. The planet's technological signature was laughably primitive, a mere blip in the Zornak's comprehensive star charts. "Scan complete," announced Sub-Commander Vexna, her voice a series of precise clicking sounds that translated perfectly through the ship's communication systems. "Planetary defense capabilities are minimal. Technological index rates at pre-quantum stage. Estimated resistance time: approximately 72 standard orbital cycles." Krellix allowed himself a moment of contemptuous satisfaction. The Zornak Empire had conquered civilizations far more advanced than these humans. Their records showed a species barely capable of leaving their own planetary atmosphere, riddled with internal conflicts, environmental challenges, and primitive technological infrastructure. The preliminary reports were almost insulting in their simplicity. Humanity's most advanced weapon systems were little more than chemical-propelled projectile launchers and rudimentary energy manipulation devices. Their space exploration was limited to a handful of robotic probes and a few temporary orbital stations. Their global communication networks were vulnerable, their planetary shields non-existent by galactic standards. "Initiate primary reconnaissance protocol," Krellix commanded, his voice resonating with the cold calculation of a species that had conquered hundreds of worlds. "Prepare initial bombardment vectors. We will demonstrate the futility of resistance." Deep within the ship's data cores, hundreds of thousands of simulations played out. Each projected scenario ended the same way: swift, total capitulation. The humans would either submit or be eradicated. It was a pattern the Zornak had repeated across multiple star systems. But data could not capture everything. Unknown to the Zornak, deep within underground facilities scattered across the Earth, something was stirring. Years of preparation, of quiet development, of learning from every conflict and technological challenge, were about to be put to the ultimate test. In Washington, D.C., a secure bunker beneath the Pentagon hummed with activity. Military strategists, scientific experts, and political leaders watched the incoming alien fleet with a calm that would have surprised the Zornak. This was not the panic of a primitive species facing extinction. This was the calculated readiness of a civilization that understood survival was an art form. General Marcus Holloway studied the holographic displays, his weathered fingers tracing the movement of the alien ships. Beside him, Dr. Elena Rodriguez, lead scientist of the most classified defense project in human history, remained perfectly still. Years of preparation had led to this moment. "They're running standard invasion protocols," Rodriguez murmured, her eyes tracking the alien fleet's predictable approach patterns. "Textbook galactic conquest strategy." Holloway's lips curved into a slight smile. Textbook being the operative word. Across the planet, in facilities that appeared to be nothing more than ordinary industrial complexes, research centers, and geological survey stations, teams of humans were moving with precision. To an outside observer, their actions might have seemed routine, but each movement was calculated, each system a piece of a larger, more complex defensive mechanism. The Zornak saw what they expected to see, a primitive planet ripe for conquest. They did not see the intricate networks forming, the adaptive technologies being activated, the planetary defense systems that had been decades in the making. Humanity had always been its own greatest weapon, adaptable, innovative, capable of transforming limitation into strength. As the first Zornak ships began their approach, preparing bombardment sequences and invasion protocols, they remained blissfully unaware that they were sailing into something far beyond their comprehension. The humans were ready. And ready meant something very different here than anywhere else in the known galaxy. Major Jackson Williams walked the long corridor of the underground facility, his footsteps echoing against walls that concealed humanity's most audacious defense project. Each step carried the weight of decades of preparation, of scientific breakthroughs that would never see a public research journal, of technologies that existed only in the most classified archives of human intelligence. The facility stretched for miles beneath the Rocky Mountains, a labyrinth of technological marvel that defied conventional understanding of engineering and geological adaptation. Project Titan was more than a weapons system. It was humanity's ultimate insurance policy. Williams paused before a massive holographic display, his reflection ghosting over the intricate schematics of the planetary defense network. At 57, he bore the scars of 3 global conflicts, each one a lesson in human resilience. His right hand, a marvel of biomechatronic engineering, twitched slightly, a reminder of sacrifices made in previous defensive preparations. The project had begun as a whispered concept in the aftermath of the 2037 Near-Earth Object Crisis. When a series of asteroid impacts had devastated multiple continents, humanity realized that survival demanded more than reactive measures. They needed a proactive, adaptive defense system that could anticipate and neutralize threats on a planetary scale. "Progress report," he called out. Dr. Amara Thompson stepped forward, her augmented reality interface dancing around her like a living constellation of data. "Quantum integration at 97.3%, she reported. "Geological adaptive matrices are fully synchronized. We've managed to camouflage the entire system's energy signature to be indistinguishable from natural planetary processes." The brilliance of Project Titan lay in its fundamental concept. It wasn't just a weapon. It was a living, breathing extension of the planet itself. Adaptive nanomaterials woven through geological strata, quantum processors embedded in mountain ranges, metamaterials capable of shifting between solid, liquid, and energy states faster than biological thought could process. Williams remembered the early days, the international collaboration that transcended political boundaries. Scientists and military strategists from every continent, united by a single purpose. They had seen the potential threats lurking in the vast darkness of space and understood that humanity's survival depended on thinking beyond traditional defensive paradigms. "Simulation Gamma 9, Williams commanded. The holographic display transformed. A detailed projection of potential alien invasion scenarios began to play out. Each simulation showed the Titan system responding, not as a static defense, but as a dynamic learning entity. Mountain ranges could become weapon systems. Entire geological formations could shift and adapt. The planet itself would become a living, breathing defensive mechanism. Dr. Thompson highlighted a particular sequence. Notice how the system learns from each potential attack vector. It's not just responding, it's anticipating. The quantum neural network can process potential invasion scenarios faster than any known biological or artificial intelligence. The cost had been astronomical. Trillions of dollars diverted from public budgets, hidden behind infrastructure projects and geological research grants. Years of incremental development, of testing technologies that pushed the boundaries of known science. Military budgets, private research funds, even redirected climate adaptation technologies, all contributed to this ultimate defensive strategy. "We're more than ready," Williams muttered, more to himself than to anyone else in the room. A sudden alert flashed across the displays. The Zornak fleet was approaching the solar system's outer reaches. Years of intelligence gathering had prepared them for this moment. Every alien communication intercept, every studied invasion pattern, had been integrated into the Titan system's predictive algorithms. "Activation sequence initiated," Dr. Thompson announced. Beneath their feet, miles of adaptive materials began to stir. Quantum processors that had been dormant for years started to synchronize. The very mountains began to hum with a frequency just beyond human hearing, a planetary nervous system awakening. Major Williams allowed himself a rare smile. The aliens believed they were approaching a primitive planet ripe for conquest. They had no idea that humanity's true weapon was not technology, but the ability to reimagine survival itself. "Let them come," he whispered. The first Zornak energy weapons carved through Earth's orbital defenses with surgical precision. Satellites erupted in silent explosions, crystalline fragments spinning into the void of space. Communication networks flickered and died, a choreographed dismantling of humanity's technological infrastructure. From the underground command center beneath Colorado Springs, Colonel Rachel Martinez watched the initial assault with calculated calm. Her fingers moved across quantum interface panels, tracking the alien fleet's progression. Around her, a team of specialists from every branch of global defense worked with machine-like efficiency. "Orbital network compromised," announced Lieutenant David Chen, his voice steady despite the magnitude of the attack. "Satellite communications down 62%. To any outside observer, it would have appeared that humanity was utterly defenseless. The Zornak bombardment continued, targeting major communication hubs, military installations, and critical infrastructure. Massive energy weapons punched through cloud layers, leaving trails of superheated plasma in their wake. Cities went into controlled chaos. In New York, evacuation protocols that had been decades in preparation activated seamlessly. Underground shelters, disguised as mundane infrastructure projects, opened with hydraulic precision. Entire city blocks seemed to fold in on themselves, revealing protective layers that had been hidden in plain sight for years. "Threat assessment," Colonel Martinez commanded. A holographic display materialized, showing the progression of the Zornak fleet. Their attack pattern was textbook, almost too perfect. Systematic, predictable. Each movement calculated to maximize destruction, while minimizing resistance. They had no idea how wrong they were. Beneath the surface, a complex network of defensive systems began to activate. What appeared to be random geological formations started to shift almost imperceptibly. Communication lines that seemed destroyed found alternative pathways, quantum entanglement networks that the aliens couldn't detect or disrupt. In Tokyo, a massive underground facility that had been disguised as a geological research center came alive. Quantum processors embedded in the city's infrastructure began to redistribute communication signals. Where the Zornak saw destruction, humans saw an opportunity to adapt. Energy redirection at 43%. A technician reported from the Tokyo Command Center. Alien targeting systems beginning to experience quantum interference. The first sign that something was wrong came when Zornak ships started experiencing inexplicable system failures. Navigation computers went haywire. Weapon targeting became increasingly erratic. What should have been a straightforward invasion was becoming anything but predictable. On the bridge of the Void Piercer, Ambassador Krelix watched in growing confusion. The preliminary scans had suggested total technological superiority. The initial assault should have been a mere formality, a demonstration of the Zornak's galactic dominance. Sub-Commander Vexna, Krelix clicked, explained the anomalies in our targeting systems. Vexna's response was hesitant, a rare occurrence for a Zornak military officer. Inconclusive, Ambassador. Our systems are experiencing quantum-level disruptions that defy our current understanding. What the Zornak didn't realize was that humanity had been preparing for this moment for decades. Every conflict, every technological challenge, had been a learning experience. The apparent vulnerability was nothing more than a carefully constructed illusion. In the Australian outback, what appeared to be a series of mundane communication towers began to reconfigure. Adaptive materials shifted, creating a complex network of quantum interference generators. The towers were more than communication infrastructure. They were the first line of a planetary immune system. Initial defense protocols are working, Colonel Martinez reported to Major Williams in the underground Titan facility. They're experiencing disruption, but they haven't seen anything yet. The Zornak continued their assault, believing they were systematically dismantling human defensive capabilities. Each destroyed satellite, each targeted communication hub, was feeding into a larger strategy that the aliens couldn't comprehend. Humanity was not defending. They were waiting. And the waiting was almost over. Commander Rachel Martinez leaned forward, her augmented contact lenses parsing through layers of quantum data that would have been incomprehensible to human eyes just a decade ago. The underground command center buzzed with an electric anticipation that defied the gravity of their situation. "Activate Phase 2, she whispered. Across the globe, what appeared to be random systems began to respond. Weather monitoring stations in the Arctic transformed into complex quantum interference generators. Geological research facilities along the Pacific Rim became adaptive defense nodes. Seemingly ordinary infrastructure revealed itself as an intricate, planet-wide defensive network. The Zornak had studied human technology for years. They believed they understood humanity's capabilities, a fatal mistake that would cost them dearly. In the depths of the Pacific Ocean, a series of underwater research platforms began to move. These were not mere scientific outposts, but advanced defensive installations disguised as civilian research centers. Adaptive metamaterials shifted, creating complex energy fields that disrupted alien sensor technologies. Dr. Marcus Reyes, lead scientist of the Pacific Quantum Defensive Network, watched as the first layer of their defense came online. "Quantum entanglement protocols are engaging," he reported. "We're creating interference patterns that should completely disorient their targeting systems." The brilliance of humanity's defense lay in its complexity. Where alien intelligence expected linear responses, humans had created a multidimensional defensive strategy. Each system was not just a weapon, but a node in a living, breathing planetary defense network. On the Void Piercer, Ambassador Krulix began to feel the first true stirrings of concern. The invasion, so carefully planned, so meticulously simulated, was becoming something entirely unexpected. "Sub-Commander Vexna," he clicked, "our targeting systems are experiencing unprecedented disruption." "Explain." Vexna's response was uncharacteristically uncertain. Zornak military doctrine relied on absolute predictability. Humanity was introducing variables that defied their comprehensive invasion protocols. In the Australian outback, a series of communication towers that had appeared mundane now revealed their true purpose. Quantum processors embedded in their structures created complex interference patterns. Energy signatures that should have been clear targets became impossible to lock onto. Major Jackson Williams watched the global defense network come alive. Years of preparation, of studying every potential invasion scenario, were paying dividends. Humanity had learned something crucial from its own tumultuous history. Survival was about adaptability, not just technological superiority. "They're trying to establish a planetary blockade," Lieutenant David Chen announced, tracking the alien fleet's movements. "But our quantum redirection networks are fragmenting their attack vectors." The defense was more than technological. It was a fundamental reimagining of planetary protection. Satellites that appeared destroyed revealed themselves as decoys. Communication networks that seemed compromised found alternative pathways through quantum entanglement. What the Zornak saw as destruction, humans saw as an opportunity to redirect and confuse. In the mountains of Chill, a facility that had been disguised as a mining operation activated its first defensive protocols. Adaptive materials began to shift, creating energy fields that could bend light, disrupt sensor readings, and create completely false environmental signatures. "Defensive camouflage at 78%, reported Dr. Elena Rodriguez from the facility's command center. "They won't know what's real and what's an illusion." The Zornak had conquered hundreds of worlds. They had developed invasion strategies that had brought entire civilizations to their knees. But they had never encountered a species like humans, a civilization that saw limitation as an opportunity for innovation. Ambassador Krulix watched in growing frustration as their carefully planned invasion began to unravel. Each attack vector was being subtly redirected. Each weapon system was experiencing inexplicable interference. The humans were not just defending. They were playing an entirely different game. "This is impossible," Vexna muttered, a rare moment of emotional display for a Zornak military officer. But it was happening. Humanity was transforming the very concept of planetary defense. And they were just getting started. The Rocky Mountains had never been just mountains. Seismic sensors across North America began to register impossible readings. Geological structures that had existed for millions of years started to move with a precision that defied natural law. What appeared to be solid rock began to shift, revealing layers of complexity that no satellite scanning system could have anticipated. Major Jackson Williams watched from the underground command center as Project Titan prepared to reveal itself. Years of preparation, decades of scientific innovation, were about to be tested in the most extreme scenario imaginable. Activation sequence initiated, Dr. Amara Thompson announced, her voice steady despite the magnitude of what was about to happen. The first sign came as a low vibration, so subtle that most would have missed it, a tremor beneath the Earth's surface that wasn't quite an earthquake. Quantum processors embedded deep within the geological strata began to synchronize, creating a neural network that spanned thousands of miles. On the Void Piercer, Ambassador Krelix first noticed something was wrong when their long-range scanners began to experience unprecedented distortions. The mountain range that had appeared as a simple geological formation was transforming. Adaptive materials that had been integrated into the mountain's very structure began to reconfigure. What looked like solid rock peeled away, revealing layers of technological marvel that defied every known principle of engineering. The mountain wasn't just a defensive position, it was becoming a living, breathing weapon system. Standing over 3 kilometers tall, Project Titan emerged. It was less a machine and more a living ecosystem of defensive technology, adaptive materials that could think, respond, and transform faster than any biological or mechanical intelligence. The construct drew energy directly from the Earth's geological processes, making it virtually unlimited in its operational capacity. Impossible, Sub-Commander Vexna muttered, her translator struggling to process what her sensors were showing. The Titan was a masterpiece of interdisciplinary innovation. Quantum computing integrated with geological adaptive technologies. Metamaterials that could shift between solid, liquid, and energy states faster than thought. Defensive systems that were simultaneously a weapon, a shield, and a communication network. Across the global defense network, other similar systems began to activate. What had appeared to be simple geological research stations, mining operations, and communication towers revealed themselves as integrated defensive nodes. The entire planet was transforming into a single, coherent defensive organism. Dr. Elena Rodriguez tracked the system's activation from the Chilean facility. Quantum synchronization at 92%, she reported. All defensive nodes are coming online. The Titan didn't just move. It anticipated. Each potential alien attack vector was analyzed, predicted, and countered before it could even be fully formed. The system had been learning, preparing for decades. Every conflict humanity had experienced, every technological challenge, had been integrated into its adaptive neural network. Ambassador Krelix watched in growing horror as the mountain continued to transform. Weapon systems that violated every known principle of physics began targeting Zornak ships with terrifying accuracy. Energy fields formed and dissipated, creating defensive barriers that seemed to bend the very fabric of reality. "This is not possible," Krelix clicked, his confidence beginning to crack. But it was happening. The Titan was more than a weapon. It was a statement, a declaration that humanity would not be conquered, that every invasion, every attempt to subjugate, would be met with a response that defied comprehension. "Full defensive protocols engage," Major Williams commanded. The mountain continued to move. Geological structures reconfigured themselves. Energy fields that could redirect entire weapon systems came online. The Titan was not just defending, it was preparing to counterattack. Humanity had transformed the very concept of planetary defense. and the Zornak were about to learn a lesson they would never forget. Ambassador Krelix watched in mounting desperation as entire squadrons of Zornak ships began to disintegrate. The invasion plan, meticulously crafted over decades of interstellar conquest, was unraveling in ways that defied all known military doctrine. The bridge of the Void Piercer trembled with an emotion rarely experienced by the Zornak: genuine fear. Tactical analysis, Krelix demanded, his tentacular appendages writhing with agitation. Sub-Commander Vexna's response was a cascade of impossible data. Their most advanced targeting systems were being systematically dismantled, not through direct attack, but through a complex web of quantum interference, adaptive redirection, and predictive countermeasures that seemed to anticipate every potential move before it could be executed. Across the globe, humanity's defensive network was more than a series of weapons. It was a living, breathing ecosystem of technological innovation. In the underground command center, Major Jackson Williams watched the global defensive symphony with a calm that bordered on surgical precision. Each alien attack became a new data point, a lesson immediately integrated into the planetary defense network. They're running predictive models, Dr. Emara Thompson announced, her fingers dancing across quantum interface panels. But our adaptive systems are learning faster than their computational abilities can track. The brilliance of humanity's defense lay in its fundamental approach. Where the Zornak saw linear warfare, humans had created a multi-dimensional battlefield that changed its very nature with each passing moment. Defensive systems in Australia redirected energy weapons. Quantum processors in the Arctic created interference patterns that scrambled alien sensor technologies. Underground facilities in South America generated complex electromagnetic fields that made targeting impossible. Defensive node synchronization at 97%, Lieutenant David Chen reported. Each of humanity's defensive systems was learning, adapting, growing more sophisticated with every millisecond of the conflict. The Zornak had conquered hundreds of worlds, but they had never encountered a species that could transform limitation into strength so rapidly. On the Void Piercer, the alien invasion command began to fracture. Their perfectly orchestrated assault was becoming a desperate scramble for survival. Our weapon systems are being rendered inoperable, Vexna reported, a tremor of uncertainty in her communication clicks. The humans are not just defending. They're actively dismantling our technological infrastructure. Ambassador Krelix understood something fundamental was happening. This was more than a battle. It was a complete reimagining of warfare itself. Defensive systems that appeared to be simple communication towers transformed. Geological research stations became complex weapon platforms. Even the planet's weather systems were being manipulated to create defensive interference patterns. Dr. Elena Rodriguez tracked the global defensive network from her facility in Chile. They're trying to establish attack vectors, she announced. But our predictive algorithms are 3 steps ahead of their computational capabilities. The Zornak had a fatal weakness. They expected warfare to follow a predictable pattern. Humanity's strength had always been its ability to break those patterns, to see opportunity where others saw limitation. Adaptive response protocols at maximum efficiency, Major Williams observed. Each destroyed Zornak ship became a learning opportunity. Each failed attack vector was immediately analyzed, integrated, and used to strengthen the global defensive network. The humans were not just fighting. They were evolving in real time. Sub-Commander Vexna's computational systems began to overheat as she tried to process the impossible scenarios unfolding. The humans were transforming the very concept of technological warfare. They're treating the entire planet as a single adaptive defensive organism, she reported, a note of grudging respect entering her communication. Ambassador Krelix watched as their perfectly planned invasion dissolved. Entire squadrons of ships became nothing more than expanding clouds of crystalline fragments. Their most advanced weapon systems were being systematically neutralized by a species they had considered primitive. The Zornak were experiencing something unprecedented in their galactic history. They were losing, and humanity was just getting started. The conflict transformed from a traditional invasion into a complex, multi-dimensional engagement that defied every known principle of galactic warfare. Humanity had turned the entire planet into a single adaptive defensive system that learned and responded faster than any known biological or technological intelligence. Major Jackson Williams stood in the central command hub, watching holographic displays that tracked the global defensive response. Each moment brought new revelations about human capability that would rewrite every understanding of planetary defense. Adaptive response protocols are exceeding projected parameters, Dr. Amara Thompson reported, her voice a mixture of scientific excitement and strategic focus. The Zornak found themselves fighting an enemy that was simultaneously everywhere and nowhere. Weapon systems that should have been devastating became ineffective. Attack vectors that had conquered hundreds of worlds were systematically dismantled before they could be fully implemented. In the Pacific, underwater research platforms transformed into complex defensive nodes. Quantum entanglement networks created communication pathways that the aliens couldn't intercept or disrupt. What appeared to be simple marine research stations became intricate weapon platforms that could redirect entire energy weapon systems. Ambassador Krellix watched in growing desperation as their invasion plan completely unraveled. The Zornak had conquered civilizations across multiple star systems, but they had never encountered a species that could transform planetary defense into a living, thinking ecosystem. "We're experiencing total system compromise," Sub-Commander Vexna reported, her typically emotionless communication now tinged with something approaching panic. The Australian outback revealed itself as a massive quantum interference generator. Communication towers that had appeared mundane became complex defensive nodes that could redirect entire energy signatures. Geological research stations in the region created interference patterns that made alien targeting systems completely unreliable. Dr. Elena Rodriguez tracked the global defensive network from her facility in Chile. "They're attempting to establish new attack vectors," she announced. "But our predictive algorithms are generating counter-strategies faster than their computational systems can process." Humanity's defensive strategy was a symphony of interdisciplinary innovation. Meteorological systems became part of the defensive network. Satellite communication infrastructures transformed into complex quantum interference generators. Even the planet's geological structures were now part of a comprehensive defensive mechanism. Full planetary defense integration at 99.7%, Lieutenant David Chen reported. The Zornak had studied human technology for decades. They believed they understood humanity's capabilities, a fatal miscalculation that would become a legendary cautionary tale across galactic civilizations. In the Arctic, what appeared to be simple weather monitoring stations became advanced quantum redirection platforms. Energy weapons that should have devastated entire continents were absorbed, transformed, and redirected with terrifying precision. Major Williams understood the fundamental truth of the engagement. This was not just a defensive action. It was a complete reimagining of planetary protection. "They're treating every system as a potential defensive node," Sub-Commander Vexna reported, a note of grudging respect in her communication. "The humans are not just defending. They're actively dismantling our technological infrastructure." Entire squadrons of Zornak ships began to experience total system failures. Navigation computers went haywire. Weapon targeting became impossible. Communication networks dissolved into quantum noise. The invasion was transforming from a military operation into a lesson in human innovation. Ambassador Krellix watched as their perfectly planned assault dissolved into chaos. Entire attack formations became nothing more than expanding clouds of crystalline fragments. Their most advanced weapon systems were being systematically neutralized by a species they had considered primitive. "This is impossible," Krellix clicked, his confidence shattering. But it was happening. The entire planet had become a single adaptive defensive organism. Every research station, every communication network, every geological formation was now part of a comprehensive defensive strategy that learned and responded faster than any known intelligence. Humanity was not just surviving. They were rewriting the very concept of planetary defense. The final Zornak ships retreated in a display of desperation that would be remembered across galactic civilizations. What had begun as a calculated invasion had transformed into the most comprehensive defeat in the Empire's recorded history. Major Jackson Williams stood beside the now dormant Titan construct, watching the last alien vessels disappear from Earth's orbital space. The massive defensive system began to recalibrate, its adaptive materials slowly returning to their camouflaged state. Mountains shifted, geological formations returned to their original configurations, but something had fundamentally changed. Planetary Defense Network powering down, Dr. Amara Thompson reported, her voice a mixture of exhaustion and triumph. In the underground command center, Colonel Rachel Martinez began the process of compiling the most classified report in human history. Every moment of the conflict would be analyzed, studied, and integrated into humanity's growing understanding of interstellar defense. The Zornak had come with absolute confidence. They left with a lesson that would echo through their entire civilization. Ambassador Krullik sat in the decimated bridge of the Void Piercer, trying to comprehend the impossible defeat. Their invasion protocols, developed over centuries of galactic conquest, had been systematically dismantled by a species they had considered technologically primitive. Total fleet losses, Sub-Commander Vexna reported, 87.6% of our invasion force. It wasn't just the technological defeat that was staggering. It was how the humans had done it. They had transformed an entire planet into a living, thinking defensive system. Every research station, every communication network, every geological formation had become part of a comprehensive strategy that learned and responded faster than any known intelligence. Dr. Elena Rodriguez began the process of returning the global defensive network to its dormant state. Quantum interference generators in the Australian outback powered down. Arctic weather monitoring stations returned to their original configurations. Underwater research platforms along the Pacific Rim resumed their scientific missions. To an outside observer, it would appear nothing had happened. But everything had changed. Prepare the initial report, Major Williams commanded. Classified at the highest level. The report would never see public light, but its implications would reshape humanity's understanding of planetary defense, technological innovation, and survival. Lieutenant David Chen began compiling the initial data analysis. The defensive systems had not just responded, they had learned. Every alien attack vector had become a new data point, a lesson immediately integrated into the planetary defense network. The humans had treated the entire conflict as a comprehensive learning experience. On the bridge of the Void Piercer, Ambassador Krullik experienced something unprecedented in Zornak history. Complete system failure coupled with a fundamental understanding of their own limitations. They did not just defend, Vexna observed. They transformed the entire concept of planetary protection. The global defensive network had been more than a series of weapons. It was a living, breathing ecosystem of technological innovation. Meteorological systems, communication infrastructures, geological structures. Everything had become part of a comprehensive defensive mechanism that could think, adapt, and respond faster than any known biological or technological intelligence. Major Williams understood the deeper implication. This was not just about defending against a single invasion. This was about humanity's fundamental approach to survival. Planetary Defense Network fully powered down, Dr. Thompson announced. The Titan construct began to dissolve back into the mountain range, its adaptive materials returning to their camouflaged state. To any satellite or alien scanner, it would appear to be nothing more than a simple geological formation. But something fundamental had changed. The Zornak would spread stories across their civilization. Stories of the day they laughed, and then were silenced. Of the planet where mountains came alive, where every system became a weapon, where a supposedly primitive species reimagined the very concept of planetary defense. Humanity had sent a message to the stars. We are not just another species to be conquered. We are a force to be respected.